All right, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this will be a shorter recap today because I have to jump to a meeting. But today I think was mostly about just kind of a recovery in tech. The Qs did outperform, up 45 basis points versus the large caps, which were flat, SPY, and small caps underperformed a little bit. So a little bit of a breather continues for the small caps. Again, it's kind of like it's a rotation every single day. Small caps coming into some support here. That's IWM. Real big move up. One of the best performing areas the last couple weeks, but has been coming in pretty hard here since hitting a top. Again, I think perfectly normal. I think when you watch financial media, they're just making a little bit too much of it. The market can't go up every day. It does have small little corrections from time to time. This is nothing unusual in my opinion until we really break some areas. But analyzing things, I guess in the short term is kind of what we do. We probably overanalyze a little bit, which is fine. Um, the VXN, which I've been talking about, because I will talk about different things depending on what's going on with the market. So VXN is something that I've had, a chart of this thing on one of my screens at all times because, there's been higher volatility in the Q. So what we really want to see is this for this to kind of duck below this white line and really kind of take out this at least 16 and a half and then the 16 level. So the good news is a couple of points for the good news is we started to go a little bit higher on the open, but kind of just faded throughout the day. Now we didn't completely get below that 1650 or 16 level, but again it takes a little bit of time and you have to be a little bit patient, but things are moving in the right direction. The other observation to note is that the last couple days, Monday in particular, and Tuesday, there's been some heavy selling towards the end of the day. We did not get that today. Again, it wasn't completely blue skies and everything, and rainbows were out at the end at the end of the day, and there was huge buying. But at least some of this selling, maybe a little bit of selling the winners into year end, dissipated. So we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know if that's over. So we'll continue to watch this VXN. Once that VXN cracks that 16 level, that the volatility is dissipating. So again, really watch 1650 and then 16 handle. Again, the reason why I'm looking at this VXN, it's the volatility. It measures the volatility short term for the NDX or the Qs. I'm not looking at the VIX here because the VIX is really not applying. There's not that much volatility. We're still staying above 11. What did we close? 1102 in the overall VIX, but we're kind of like in the middle of either going higher here in volatility or dropping back down around this 10 level. My guess is that we go back to the 10 level, but we'll see. Like I said, we're not out of the woods. I think this government possible shutdown is still looming over the market. So, until things kind of clear up a little bit with that, maybe we continue to kind of stay a little bit heightened. Again, I can't believe I'm saying a little bit heightened with the VIX at 11, but it is what it is. So you have to really know some of these things. There was a little bit of tech selling in the morning. You could look at the XLK ETF. Again, if you're just, I see, I think there's a ton of people that are now in the game of watching option activity. You have to watch other things. That's only one part of the puzzle. You could watch all the call buying you want, but if there's huge sellers that are selling, with two hands, basically, if they're selling in cash, it makes no. The call buyers is not going to do a damn thing, except maybe prop some things up, right? I mean, so it's not. Call buying is great for momentum. Same thing with put buying. But that's, again, only one part of how the market functions. That's not the only thing going on. So you really have to look at both. Here was the order that I saw. This was a sweep around 10 o'clock this morning. And this was 820,000 of XLK. So again, that's a $50 million order. So when you see big blocks like this, again, you have to look at both. Because all I see all the time is people talk about option activity, and that's great. I think in a low volatility environment, the call buyers can really push things around, but you got to wear different hats and you got to pay attention to different type. And we look at both in the Tribeca trade room. Again, when the volatility is low, I'll probably look a little bit less at some of the stock prints. and some of the stock prints is the underlying volume is lighter, but I have them up both, and I'm watching both, and that's something that I think I'm emphasizing enough, but nailing that home enough, but call buying won't do a damn thing if everybody is selling. So what did we see this morning? Kind of a big fade. We started to see in the first hour or two, just to kind of wrap this up, a fade in some things. Like Square got a nice pop this morning, but still not nearly out of the woods. You got support here in Square. That was one of the first call buyers that we saw, and it looked like Square was going to have a great day. And then it just completely, about a half hour after the open, ducked underneath the 20-day moving average. So as long as you're using I don't make reference to this every day, but if I use the moving averages. Once the price dips below, that's your time to say, oh, this is not what I thought was going to happen. Let me just go through the rest of the option activity, and I'll talk about a couple other things. WBA, I mentioned this is for me it's a counter trend trade. I put a very small trade on in WBA. Why? Because that's what my game plan tells me to do. That's what my trading plan tells me to do. Is I could participate every once in a while in a counter trend trade when the price is below the 200-day moving average, but I'll do it smaller size. It's just a much harder trade to try to pick the bottom in something. And I think you do have some support in here. But again, it's a counter trend trade. The stock's in a downtrend. Still, it compelled me. This nice WBA order, Walgreens, got me into this trade. This was a $571,000 trade, right? So that will prompt me to take a small trade. The steel names, really nice. I put a trade on the other day. I think it was Friday. Monday it was a big winner. I took the majority of it off. I kept a small portion on, and it actually finished just up a little bit, but just kind of scalping a little bit with this at this point because I added some in here yesterday, and I was able to take that off. So I'm just sitting with a small position in Nucor. They keep coming in, so I believe they do have. They're supposed to provide guidance. I think it's on their first quarter. I don't have the date for it, but I believe that's coming up in the next week or so. So it will become type of a binary event for Nucor. But they keep buying calls. This time they bought December 22nd. If you remember, on Friday they bought the 60 calls, and then on Monday I believe they bought the 62 and a half calls. So we'll see if they're right. We shall see if they're right. A little bit of Apple call buying today. Roku made a nice move today. There were some April calls that went up. There was also some January calls. Fox A, there was a big block. I mean, I don't really know what they're expecting. I never know, but it's already had a nice move. So kind of, I don't really chase names after they've had this type of a move, and they see call buying at what to me seems like the end of a move. Who knows? Maybe there's going to be some sale of their assets or something that's going to lift it higher, but I don't know. I'd rather not play with a name that's already made that type of a move. CBI, this is a name we've now said probably 3 times. Again, counter trend trade below the 200-day moving average. You could use this support, however. Maybe use that top of value support, 1687. I don't know. It seems like something's going on in that name. Maybe they've got some lawsuit and overhanging them. I have no idea. We saw a little bit of Corvo calls. We saw a little bit of shop calls. Interesting, the Corvo calls right ahead of Broadcom's earnings, which seemed to be pretty good. Their guidance was really good. I'm surprised they're not up more. I actually did play Broadcom for earnings, and oh, there we go. They're up to 369 now. Okay, good. They need to get, a good level to watch is 266, so they need to stay above 266. But this kind of chart, you could see for a lot of the tech names over and over, right? I mean, names started the week below value, kind of got beaten up. Like Salesforce was a name that I'm long. It needs to stay above this 102.77 level. Same thing with BABA. BABA tried to go. It needs to get above 173. So really, the 1 hour bar comes into play with seeing if things are getting outside of this downward trend and recouping some levels. So maybe we've got that tomorrow. Don't know. Hope volatility continues to come in, but 173.73. That was a good name for me today. Salesforce was a really good name for me. PayPal was another name. This one's in value. 72.58 is your support. couple other names that just came up on my radar. Really, what drove me to this group is IGV. This was the best performer of the day. If you're not familiar with this ETF, it's different than XLK, right? Everybody looks at XLK, that's the big tech ETF. This one is IGV. This is like your second tier names. I know I've mentioned this before, but just in case you're watching my video for the first time, this is your Microsoft, your Adobe, your Salesforce, your ATBI, your Take-Two, your EA, Autodesk, Red Hat. So different group of tech names. Microsoft, there's some overlap, but there's some different names in here. Adobe looks really strong. Nice move by Adobe right into the 50-day moving average. Another name that's, you kind of have to also come back to names that had better than expected earnings. Look at Splunk today. Found support right where it needed to, right at the 20-day moving average. This looks really promising in terms of a setup, right? We don't know if this is going to go higher, but the setup looks really good. Let me just wrap this up with, it's okay to take losses, and kind of reassess things. This biotech has been so difficult. I've tried this biotech trade a couple times in here, just haven't had much success. We saw some call buying late last week, kind of gave a boost from about $81 to basically to Monday, where it failed at the 50-day moving average. I sent out a tweet. I said there's three things to watch. It's the top of value, the 50-day moving average, and then maybe to look for a target up to here. What did it do on Monday? It failed. That's once I saw this, I got out of the trade on Monday. Close to the end of the day, I think somewhere in here. It's a mess. Wait until this thing is going to prove that it could go higher. So the big thing is whenever you take a trade off for a little bit of a loss, or I think this one was a winner ultimately for me because I did put it on in here. But it wasn't a big winner, and I think once it went back to my cost basis is where I got rid of it. But monitor it afterwards. It is no problem to get out of a trade. People always think that they're going to miss something, or they think that they're going to be wrong, which you have to get over mentally to be a good trader. Just put an alert back on where you think it's going to be at an interesting level. For me, it's at 83.60. And at that 50-day moving average, let it get above in the uptrend. You're not going to miss much. Rather than kind of sit in this mess right now that this biotech is. It did put in a nice hammer today. But we have to see. There's a couple biotech conferences coming up, the ASH conference. Sometimes that ends up being a catalyst and these names move higher. Sometimes it doesn't. You don't know what these names are going to do. But just watch the price. The price is going to tell you if something good is going on in the space. So, it's a little bit away from a level that I would care again. But I'd rather be, a little bit late here than deal with this in biotech. So just a little bit of analysis here. And it does make me feel so good when I'm disciplined and I say, this doesn't look right? A failure here, and I get out of it, and the next couple of days the thing falls apart. So, you just stay disciplined. You could always get back into a trade. The fear of missing out is such a hard thing to deal with, and admitting that you might be wrong in one particular trade. The less ego you could have about your trading, the better you're going to be. And just think of it as like, it's just lines on a page, and if the lines aren't going the right way, take off and reassess and go back in when the lines make sense again. All right, that's it for tonight's video. Again, I say this about once a week on these videos, but if you have not tried us out before, you can go to tribecatradegroup.com, or you could just email me for a 3-day trial. Happy to do that. You could just hit me on Twitter. Thanks very much. Have a great night.